So like what I don't understand, like this has never happened to me. No one has ever said, Matt, like you should write a book. Like some people say it's an interesting idea, but like how in the world do you get someone to come and say, hey, Gord, I want you to write a book? How did that happen?
Kind of came out of left field. I mean, I started my Substack a couple of years ago on the advice of other people because I had written for a couple of small blogs probably 7 or 8 years ago, places where I hung out and was like a commenter. I was like a lurker on a couple of like sort of libertarian type blogs. And one of them said, hey, man, like you seem to know lots about trucking. Why don't you write something for us? And at that time, the ELD mandate was about to be employed. And so I wrote a whole big long thing about why the ELD mandate was stupid and the government's stupid and the trucking industry is stupid. And it did really, really well. And it got picked up by a couple of other bigger blogs, including Marginal Revolution, this like big name quasi-libertarian guy named Tyler Cohen, who now writes for the Free Press. So that did well. And then I started fooling around with Twitter in 2018, so about a year after I wrote that thing. And a fellow named Oliver Bateman, who used to be the co-host of a fairly popular podcast that's now gone called What's Left. He's still a writer. He's like a professional writer in his day job. He's a professional writer on the side. He's a professional writer on his Substack. The guy has like 3 different like streams of income from his writing.
That's amazing.
And he said, hey, man, you should start a Substack. And this was after I had got picked up by Newsweek to write about the Freedom Convoy. All of these things just sort of came at me. They were opportunities I accepted. I didn't seek any of this out. All of it fell in my lap, and I said yes. You know how they say like the secret to success is just saying yes to things?
That's right.
Right. So part of it's random. Opportunities came to me. I said yes. More opportunities came. Suggestions came. I said yes. Another opportunity came. So it's just literally a matter of saying yes.
I think that's a great way to look at it because I've heard the similar mantra, like the answer is yes, but what's the question? We'll figure out we're going to do it, but like what is the problem I'm trying to solve for? I don't think things are random. I think everything works exactly the way that it's supposed to. And you've gotten yourself like caught in this moment in time. And I love, like, I have been following you from afar, mostly on Twitter. I don't do Substacks. I wish I did. I'm not technically savvy to like how to use.
You don't. Well, I mean, to read them, you don't need to be. You just need to know how to read. That's a big ask for some of the truck drivers on the road today, but for you, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I can print it off and take handwritten notes, that's the way that I take in media for the most part. But you have been writing now, but as you were doing this, you were driving. Like you have been a driver in trucking for a while. So like, what was the genesis to go from creating, like, moving freight then to creating interesting content?
Good question. I've always been fairly opinionated about stuff, and I've always been a reader. I've always read a lot. And around that time when I wrote this blog post about ELDs, I just started noticing, I started paying more attention to trucking media. Like I've always known about trucking media, Overdrive Magazine, Truck News back in Canada.
Transport Topics, Freight Waves.
Yeah. I've always known about that stuff and read it like yourself from afar. And I just noticed that there was a big hole. The way they were discussing this was like not constructive and was missing things. So I started being a little bit more proactive about it. So again, I write for this blog and then I start posting on Twitter and criticizing some of this media stuff. And people start paying attention to my criticisms, I guess. But I mean, there's the whole the thing that the ATA has been pushing for years about a shortage of drivers never made any sense to me. So I started speaking up about that. And I also, we live in this time where technology, everybody's pushing tech. What about the people that have to work under it and interact with it? Like, what do they say about this? Like, all of these nerds and government people and corporate people are imposing this stuff on humans who may or may not want to have to work with it, right? Like, absolutely. Where is their voice? What do they have to think about this? And what are the actual returns from employing this technology? And what does it miss? What are its weaknesses? And what are the things that like I don't like about it? So I started talking about that. And I seem to have built up an audience just from like asking questions and being critical.
That's something that so few people kind of understand. We kind of find ourselves, there's an absence of regulation, then there's a regulation, and it's always been this way. And so there's no critical moment in time where we're like, okay, this is never going to happen. And then there's a moment where things are transitioning, and then you have, it's always been this way. Why are you complaining now? ELD's
right. Well,
forever.
people have historical amnesia. They don't know what it was like before. They don't understand that things got moved around just fine without all this stuff. They also, there's a certain case of people, part of or adjacent to what Barbara Ehrenreich called the professional managerial class, or some people call the administrative state. They're the sort of people that like manage everything, right? Manage in air quotes, because I don't think they're doing a very good job of it. And those guys all went to like, you know, a similar level of education, post-secondary education, or advanced degrees. They all consume the same media. They all think similarly. Maybe not exactly alike, but similarly. And they all have this same sort of like precepts. And because most of these people have never worked for a living, most of these people have never sweat, most of these people have never dealt with like the actual granular workings of how our society comes to be, they make these like, they're susceptible to dumb shit, like put a label on something. This is green. This is good for the environment.
This
organic. Is safe. This is organic. It's just their brains shut down. They are those people, despite their advanced training, are extremely susceptible to thought-terminating cliches, and they don't question why the things they believe are going to help might not actually be helping and might not actually be received well by the people upon whom they are imposing this stuff, right?
I think
so. I guess I'm screaming from the trenches here saying this shit ain't working, and I'm pointing out how it's not working, and they're still not listening.
I am so excited for this conversation today, Gord. I have been following Gord Magill for a while, and if you're not following him, you ought to do that. You'll see in the show notes a link to his Substack and his X profile. I still think it's Twitter. It's still the Sears Tower to me, but I understand that times change, and I have to be willing to change with them. This is the Armchair Attorney Podcast. I'm Matthew Leffler, a real-life lawyer, not your lawyer. If you think you need legal advice, you probably do. It's not going to be me. I don't represent you unless you're paying me money. And then let's have a conversation. Now, I have to thank the sponsors who make this thing possible. DAT, Dial a Truck. I have the DAT hat sitting on the pallid bust of Apollo, somewhat near my chamber door. For those of you who don't know about the god Apollo, he was the god of prophecy, the Oracle of Delphi. That's what he was all about. That's why that hat is sitting on top of the bust of Apollo, somewhat adjacent to my chamber door. And of course, our new sponsor, our good friends, Gen Logs, Ryan Joyce and that team, cameras all across the country, monitoring our highways for trucks and trailers, helping you find your trailer, find your truck, hopefully circumventing the bad actors that want to steal your things, and maybe help you know where is that truck and when's it going to be here. Track and trace, maybe a new version. Freight intelligence getting smarter every day. They are setting a new standard of care for understanding freight and fraud. Oh, Gord, I'm so excited to have you here. This is amazing. I first kind of caught your star rising with your Twitter account. Now, how long have you been in the Twitter world? When did you start jumping onto that?
Oh, about a rising star. Seems to me like an aircraft that keeps getting shot down by enemy fire. So I was on Facebook for a long time, probably right from when it started in 2006, when it became publicly available and they opened it up past the sort of like closed gates of universities where it first started. And I was there for about 10 years. And, you know, obviously friends, family, posting photos, whatever. And I shut my Facebook account down in 2016, 17, right around when Trump was elected, because everybody lost their minds in the first early iterations of TDS just made it like super toxic. And because I've always had politics that don't fit anywhere, it was just no good for me. So anyway, I took a break from social media for a couple of years. And then, as I mentioned before, I started writing this blog post kind of on commission for a sort of libertarianish kind of little website. And it did really well. And I thought to myself, people really like this, and I see these problems in trucking. Maybe I should like be more public about it, but like I can't do it on Facebook because that's not going to go anywhere. I'm like, well, where are all the movers and shakers? Where's the politicians? Where are the academics? Where's the media? Well, they're all on Twitter. They're constantly talking about Twitter. I knew nothing about Twitter because I never used it. So 2018, I started a Twitter account, used it for a few months, shut it down. I didn't get the lingo. I didn't get the like back and forth and the sort of Twitter culture.
Yeah.
And then I came back and tried it out again and sort of gave it a little bit more effort, thought a little bit more about what people were saying before I replied, was more of a lurker, and then started doing my thing. And then 2020, I got kicked off, and that started like a repetition. I'm now on my 6th Twitter account.
Really?
I deep sixed my first one. 4 of them were canceled by Twitter. Not by Twitter, by people complaining to Twitter about me. And then my last one was a dormant account that I had started in like 2009 that I'd completely forgotten about. And then in the wake of the like Tucker Carlson thing, someone pointed it out to me. Hey, is that your name? And I'm like, oh, shoot. I signed up for a Twitter account that I never used like 16 years ago. Let's try that one. And since Musk has taken it over and fired most of the Overton window enforcers on the platform, thus far I have survived.
That's
with the 6th account.
So like I was with you in the early adoption of Facebook. I was using that. I was playing World of Warcraft. Like that was my little world. I got rid of I kept Facebook for a while. I had a chance when I was much younger to be an early adopter of Twitter. They had just come out and I was working downtown Chicago and they had an office in a shared building with me, shared office space. And I'd walk by their door and I'd hear these bird sounds. And I'm a young attorney and I'm like, why are there birds in your office? Like, no, it's not birds. It's this thing called Twitter. You should get it. I'm like, what does it do? Like, oh, it's like messaging and you put it out in the public. I'm like, is it directed at anyone? They're like, no, you're just kind of talking to the internet. I'm like, that sounds dumb. I don't want to do that. That was like 2011-ish or so. And then like fast forward 15 years, now I'm on X and I'm like, oh, I'm trying to be cool with the kids. I could have been cool, Gord. I could have been cool. It didn't work out for me. What I love about your writing style is that you have this perspective, historical perspective. And I, as a professor, kind of an adjunct, not a real professor, kind of a real professor. The idea is like, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you are. You don't know where you are unless you know where you've been. And we have been some interesting places. I look at like the ELD mandate, as you mentioned, we talked about a little bit before, is this fascinating moment where the big motor carriers who had already adopted these things for their own reasons really forced the federal government into the FMCSA rulemaking process. Like, we need everyone to have these. And we need the government to mandate that they all use these and it'll make our roads safer. And
it did not.
It did not. That exactly. And there is so much empirical evidence on that.
Speaking of history, let me interrupt you. So there's a precedence for this imposition of a new control technology on truckers that starts with the big carriers, then goes to the government, and then the government makes it the rule for everybody, right? So speed limiters.
Yeah, that's right.
I know that here in the United States, Secretary Duffy, they're basically like getting rid of it.
Yeah,
any consideration of it, it's gone. And it starts in Canada. So in the mid-2000s, in the province of Ontario, they start making noise about speed limiters. The government's not making the noise about this. It's the Ontario Trucking Association, who are the provincial wing of the Canadian Trucking Alliance, who are the Canadian equivalent of the American Trucking Association. They represent all of the large carriers in Canada. And the problem that they were having is that most trucking companies in Canada haul to the United States, okay? Most Canada and the United States have this long trading partnership. There's tons of Canadian trucks in the US. Traditionally speaking, typically 80% of the cross-border freight going north or south out of Canada is on Canadian trucks. There's a little bit of American penetration into the Canadian market, but typically mostly Canadian trucks. Now, when you come to the United States, if you're, say, in Ontario or Quebec, and you're going to California or Arizona to pick up produce, a lot of states you're driving through have very high speed limits. North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada, you can do 70, 80 miles an hour. Ontario, the speed limit's 100 kilometers an hour, which is 62.
Oh, wow.
On the signs. They've since upped it on the sections of the 400 series highways in Ontario have been upped up to 110. But the Ontario Provincial Police don't really enforce it under 120. That's basically the government says it's 100. The cops say it's 120, which is 75. Okay. So anyway, a lot of trucking companies in Ontario were already speed limiting their trucks to try and save fuel, which is fine. That's great. That's your company. You do what you want with your trucks. No problem, right? The problem they had is that their drivers would be like driving across Wyoming, doing 62 miles an hour, and everyone else is doing 75, 80, blowing my doors off, and I'm getting paid by the mile, so I'm losing money.
That's right.
So a lot of drivers would quit and go to work for smaller companies, specialized companies that ran the West Coast, paid them bigger dollars, and gave them fast, fancy trucks. The Ontario Trucking Association and their membership really didn't like that very much. Right? So they convinced the government to impose a speed limiter mandate. And they do this by saying, well, a lot of truckers are tailgating other drivers too much. And in certain cases, that's true. There's a remedy for this. That's called the Ontario Provincial Police.
Yeah, and you can enforce the existing regulations.
You can enforce existing regulations. And I want them to. If you're a trucker, if you're driving an 80,000-pound vehicle and you're doing 75 miles an hour on someone's bumper, I want you pulled out of that truck, beaten to within an inch of your fucking life, and then your CDL pulled for the rest of your days, because you shouldn't be doing that. Anyway, the OTA is basically approaches the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario and all the government ministers and the OPP, and they give the OPP an out. At that time, when they were proposing this in the mid-2000s in Ontario, the Ontario Provincial Police and the Ministry of Transportation both said publicly, this is going to be great for our officers because that will make them more safe. They will not be pulling as many trucks over on the side of the road and putting our officers in danger on the shoulder.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It is dangerous being an officer. No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
Right. So basically they're getting technology to do the cops' jobs for them.
I want to pull the thread on speed limiters for a minute, because I think it's an interesting topic. So for the motor carriers out there, if you want to go slower, there's a lot of value for that. To your point earlier, Gord, you save money on fuel, no doubt. You save money on maintenance. You save money on tires, money on brakes. Like, there's a lot of good value, but this is every state has a speed limit. In the United States, we all have speed limits. There are regulations in place, and we look at our commercial drivers as professionals who can make a decision of how fast or how slow they should go. So when the ELD mandate came out, like, people, there's controversy, there's litigation, but that became the law. When the speed limiter proposed rule came out, FMCSA first said 68 miles an hour, and the industry went bananas. And so they pulled the number back and said, we're just thinking about it. But I look at speed limiters as this ELD 2.0. We're going to get into your cab. We're going to make you go to the dealership or go to some place to reprogram your ECM so that you are not allowed to go the speed you think is safe. And I think Secretary Duffy has done a great job saying we're not going to do that. But to your point, it was this idea of some group who already made the decision this is the right thing to do, and then try to force everyone else to do it with this idea that it's going to be safer or better for everyone. And the reality is, like, it isn't. And the ELD is a perfect example. When we had the ELD mandate in the United States, you had less hours of service violations, ostensibly, but people started to speed and they went faster because now they have a clock. And you look at the crash data and it clearly shows, hey, that might not have been the actual solution to the problem. Maybe we created a new problem.
They were addressing the wrong problem. They were not addressing the economic incentives at play. And they were also not addressing another problem, which if you don't mind me spooling off a little bit here.
Let's go, man.
So in 2021, a study came out of a number of studies, I should say, started coming out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Mm-hmm. They have their school of, there's the Massachusetts, it's called the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics, or Supply Chains and Logistics, I can't remember. And within that school, there was a sub-program called MIT Freight Labs. And MIT Freight Lab, under the direction of a data scientist by this guy named Dr. David Carell, were studying time utilization, capacity utilization. And they did a number of studies, and they took all this data, and they came out with this article early in 2001 that had a lot of people scratching their heads because it wasn't like necessarily explained very well. Because Carell had said, the American trucking industry leaves 40% of its capacity on the table every day due to delays, detention.
Yeah.
And people were like, what? And he said, and I quote, if every trucker in America got an extra 18 minutes per day of driving time, that would solve so many problems, because then you wouldn't have a driver shortage. The supply chains would be more resilient because things get delivered on time. Well, what he had done is taken the data from all of his studies about detention, which showed on average, and this is not, we're not talking about the tails or whatever, or every person's experience, because some guys don't get held up very much. Some guys get held up all the time. But on average, the United States truck driver was only driving 6.5 hours per day, right? Now, why are they only driving 6.5 hours per day? Well, because they're sitting waiting to get loaded and unloaded. This is a capacity utilization issue. If you're paying these people by the mile, what are they going to do with that 6.5 hours to make up for the fact their whole salary is built on the idea they should be allowed to drive for 11? They're going to drive like maniacs, right? So this ELD thing, the speed limiter thing, a whole host of regulations. Oh, we have a driver shortage. Well, maybe the ATA believes we have a driver shortage because 40% of their trucks are sitting all the time, not actually moving. If those trucks were moving, maybe we wouldn't need so many drivers.
This is
and nobody. I've been watching this industry my entire life. I've been doing it semi-professionally as a writer and commentator for like 7-8 years now, looking around. Nobody ever, on the edges, people will talk about detention and, well, how do we prevent detention and how do we get truckers paid for it? Because it never seems to go away. If detention went away, if every single truck was utilized to its maximum time capacity and the driver's time capacity, people would be speeding less. We wouldn't need this guaranteeing overtime for truckers act because drivers would be making more money. We wouldn't need ELDs because less people would feel the need to cheat. Less people would speed, less aggressive driving. Nobody talks about fixing detention at all.
This is a really interesting thread I want to kind of pull and dive into. So I'm an LTL guy. My background, my father was a roadway guy before they got bought by Yellow. I mean, he was roadway 1970s. So he was pre-deregulation. And in those days, and to most LTLs remain this way, it's a drop and hook operation. Like, you are not live loading. In the LTL world, like when you're dropping off at a customer location, yeah, you're doing something, but you are not sitting for that trailer or that pup to be filled. And even the big truckload carriers, like they have massive pools of these trailers that are dropped for shippers to do. So you jump in.
Some do.
Out. Yeah, some do. And I look at like where we are today. Where we are today is there's about 550,000 motor carriers in the United States. In 1980, there were about 18,000 motor carriers. If you look at how much drivers made in 1980, when you adjust it for inflation, it's like $120,000, $130,000. Now, you can make that in some at UPS, maybe Walmart, maybe OD.
Only on the edges, only on the margins.
Yeah, on the edges. Like the average trucker today makes like $50,000 after taxes. And we at the ATA, they say it's a driver shortage because we have so many people who keep jumping in the industry and then leaving, and our turnover rate's so high. The job isn't what it used to be. It's not what it used to be. And these problems like drivers that are sitting in detention, I want to get your thoughts on this. I think that's a feature, not a bug of deregulation. Because if you were a big motor carrier, you would have the capabilities to put assets there and not have that cost of sitting dropped onto an independent contractor who has no way.
They do sometimes. They do sometimes. So a lot of some fairly substantial carriers have large trailer pools.
Yeah.
And depending on the customer, they'll have a shunt guy sitting there that trailers in and out, in and out, in and out, does all that shunt work.
Those guys.
Yeah. And like, yeah, you drop an hook, show up, drop your empty in the yard, hook onto a loaded one, away you go. They understand that getting the utilization out of their OTR drivers is what makes them their money, and they don't want them sitting, right? Some people are bright sparks and are willing to invest in that. Even the small trucking company where I started, okay, so I've been driving trucks since I was a teenager, right? I got my Ontario Class AZ, which is a CDL, when I was basically like within 2 months of turning 18. I was driving at night without a license, like doing shunting and stuff from 2 years prior to that. So I've been driving trucks since I was 16, okay? The guys I worked for at that time only had about 40, 45 highway tractors. This is 1995, okay? They understood that to get the maximum utilization out of their guys, it would be better if the trailers are preloaded for them, right? So my job, one of my jobs when I was 16 on Sunday, I would go down to this steel warehouse in Hamilton that sold all the secondary stuff that Stelco and DeFasco couldn't sell to the automotive companies and sold to everybody else. I would spend all day on Sunday putting loads on trailers, chaining them, tarping them, getting them ready to go. And then the long haul guys would come in and they would bang onto a preloaded trailer. They would go to New Jersey or Chicago or wherever, deliver the steel, bring a back load back, drop it in the yard. And then the local guys would bang onto those trailers, deliver them in Hamilton or Toronto or wherever.
And they're slip seating those local trucks too, I bet.
Well, the same guys drove the same local trucks. It's just all the OTR guys would go home. They didn't have to do the local loading and unloading because my bosses understood. In order for them to make maximum utilization of seat time, button the seat, making miles, making deliveries, they need to spend less time waiting to load and unload. So they had a whole local crew, which was a great way also. When you have a local crew, that's where you train your new guys. That's where you train your young guys, because now, hey, you're only driving around Hamilton and Toronto. If there's a problem, you don't get far away. While you're learning to drive, you don't have to worry about being far away from home, right? So like if the truck broke down in Toronto or I had a problem with a customer, some issue came up, I'm only an hour from home and I'm going to get home that night. Yeah. So there's no like worrying about kids or worrying about social life or worrying about anything because you're right there. So you learn all the tricks of the trade. You learn how to drive. You learn how to deal with customers. You learn all these little small things that like there's a whole universe of what it means to be a truck driver that's not just the physical operation of the truck and Absolutely. The very bare minimum standards of getting your CDL. Passing that test is less than 1% of what truck driving is.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? And in order to learn that, it pays to be close to home so you don't have the additional stress of being away from home.
And this is the thing I think that people kind of lose sight of with what trucking was 50 years ago, 60 years ago, because there was not an LTL and a truckload. It was trucking. The LTLs, the yellows, the roadways, the CFs, they were moving full truckloads and not full truckloads, going all sorts of places. And so if you got into the business and they were like 70, 80% Teamsters. So this was a different world than we see today, but you're learning from people that have been doing this for a while. You're using forklifts, you're understanding how to work with a shunting truck or a spotter or a hostler, whatever people want to call it. And then you're able to see people doing the line haul. You saw a totally different perspective than what we see today, which is a bunch of CDL mills popping out, pushing out hundreds, thousands of people to go drive a commercial vehicle, sometimes in as little as 3 weeks. And then they're running that 80,000 pound machine with, maybe someone who's going to train them to work at night and drive at night and drive in the mountains. But our legal requirements in the United States, you don't have to learn how to drive at night. You don't have to learn how to drive in inclement weather. You know it. You've taken the test. You parked the truck. We're good to go. It's a different world than it was back in the day.
Right. Well, the minimum CDL requirements and like what the government wants you to know is, do you know how to safely operate the vehicle per these tests? But it doesn't teach you, again, you do not need to learn how to chain up your tires to go over a mountain pass in the winter to get your CDL. You don't have to show that you understand your own circadian rhythms or what works in order to like be a night shift driver or drive all night long. You are not required to show any proficiency in maintaining that truck. I mean, the only thing you have to do is like show that you can, okay, the tires are full, the air brakes aren't chafed, the brakes are in adjustment, I checked the oil, that's it. Like the most basic cursory pre-trip inspection, that's not maintenance. Yeah. They don't teach you that stuff. They don't teach you all the little tricks like, oh, hey, shoot, you know what? Trailer got dropped too low. How am I going to get it up?
And the landing gears aren't cranking. What should I do?
Yeah, dump the air, find a 2x4 or 4x4, chuck it under the end of your frame rails, and then reinflate it and get underneath, and then lift the trailer up again, put your dollies down, and keep doing that till it's high enough. There's just all these little things.
See, that's the YouTube channel you need to make, Gord. You need to make the YouTube channel showing people how to deal with the asset falling apart or needing some minor adjustments. I would watch that.
I've thought about starting a finishing school to make CDL mill graduates better. The problem is this, that like the thing that obviates everything we're talking about right now. I'm going to start sounding like a Bernie Sanders progressive communist or whatever, but sometimes those guys have a point.
They're good ideas. Sometimes they have ideas that are useful, and we all want to be open to interesting ideas.
Sanders is famous for talking about the race to the bottom, which I think even predates him. Karl Marx was correct about the sort of logic of capitalism, where basically sooner or later in any given field, everybody gets consolidated and bought out, and then there's only one producer or service provider in that industry, which is effectively the same as the government running it. And because of economies of scale and because of like profit maximization, they're going to leave all kinds of stuff off to the side and externalize all these costs, right? Yeah. So the CDL mill thing, the getting the most least trained and least quality driver behind your truck, the wheel of your truck, is part of this, right? If you're a company that employs these types of people, you don't care about the skill or craft or, long-term thinking about the guy behind the wheel and how he's going to save you money and how he's a better operator. You're thinking, I need somebody in that truck now. It's short-term thinking along with profit maximization. The problem is the profit maximization, you're taking all of the costs of your operation and externalizing them on others, right? Like you're an attorney. You probably deal with insurance companies all the time. And I know one of your big bugaboos is like equipment out of service rates.
I love well-maintained equipment. I do.
I love it too. The problem is that's a cost. So if you can put that off for as long as possible, and then if your shitty equipment gets in an accident or causes one, well, the insurance company takes care of it. Oh, those people over there that got hurt, that's their problem, their insurance company. You've externalized the responsibility and accountability for your own operations out onto the public, onto the government, onto insurance companies. There's a lot of people in trucking, okay? At least there used to be a lot of them, especially the fire breathers on AM radio. Trucking used to lean conservative. We're all Reaganite, free market. The government shouldn't get involved in stuff. You see this on Twitter all the time. All these Twitter accounts saying the government shouldn't get involved. I'm sorry. The government's already involved, and they have caused a number of these problems. And you motherfuckers, the way you guys run your operations is to extend and put your costs and your problems onto the taxpayer and onto the motoring public. You are the socialists. You are the commies. You are the people who are saying, I don't need to pay to train my own people to have high quality operators. I'll let the government pay for CDL mills. I'll let the insurance companies just charge everybody else more because I don't want to police my own drivers. You are the fucking filthy, dirty, socialist, communist pigs.
I will. I won't use such let's say inflammatory language, but I'm going to say this. I think your sentiment is right on the money. So for folks,
I know I said I wasn't going to swear, but I get worked up about this stuff.
We're going to make this one an explicit one. I think we're going to be okay. I think we'll get more people who want to check it out.
Put the little E next to me.
Well, I'll say is like, let's look at vehicle maintenance to begin with. So the national out of service rate for commercial vehicles in the United States, that's the trucks and trailers that are moving freight like now, like at this minute. The general average is a little over 21%, sometimes 22%. So that means 1 in 5 vehicles, if you stop them and looked, would be, the brakes, lights, and tires. It's not some small thing. It is the things that matter. And I've used this analogy. I think you'd appreciate this, but if I was a grocery store and I was selling milk and I had 5 gallons to choose from, and I said, one of these gallons, Gord, is unsafe. I don't know which one, but you get to buy one of these 5. You'd say, I would prefer not to buy any from you, Matthew. And the reality is that's what our supply chain looks like. And to the point on the insurance side, this is, I think people forget this. I know you know this, but the minimum insurance to operate an interstate motor carrier in the United States is $750,000. That sounds like a lot of money. It is not a lot of money. That's like 2 weeks in a hospital here in the United States. Like if you are in a catastrophic accident, your trucking company is bankrupt. And we've seen this new trend in the United States of brokers being held responsible for using certain motor carriers because the brokers have at least some money. So to your point, like we as a nation absorb this now, like we are eating it now. And if we are okay with 20% of vehicles being unsafe, most motor carriers being underinsured, then we get what we pay for. So I'm with you. I do think
the underinsurance thing. So I want to address that. And I want to start it. I want to start the insurance thing at a point that Louis Pugh, the VP of OOIDA, mentioned in testimony 2 days ago in front of a Senate committee on trucking. OOIDA oppose your proposal.
They absolutely do. So does the ATA, by the way.
Well, let me get where I'm going here. I don't know enough about this to have an opinion on the insurance thing. I know about some of it.
Okay.
They oppose the proposal to increase the minimum $750,000 insurance carrier, right? Because they say that will increase costs, and most motor carriers that are involved in incidents, most incidents require less than that. The payouts are less than $750,000. And they're right, but the problem is the catastrophic stuff is so astronomical, it throws all the averages off. Absolutely. Now, there's on one hand, I'm sympathetic to the insurers because they're trying to insure the public, the people on the roads, right? The insurance companies are not in charge of who goes on the roads. That is the government. The state DOT, the state DMVs, the feds, that's up to them about who gets on the roads. This is where things are going to get spicy. It's my contention that the minimum requirements to get a car license, the minimum requirements to get a truck license are far too low.
Agreed.
We take it as Americans, and I may have been born in Canada, but I live in the United States, and I identify as an Appalachian American.
Yeah.
So I get it that Americans in American culture, we believe it is our God-given right to drive. We are a car culture, for better or for worse. That's right. We can argue till the cows come home about how that came to be, about the car companies, about all the things. Doesn't matter. We are what we are. Okay. The government, the insurance companies are in a rock and a hard place. They don't have to insure you, but because there's an open market in insurance, and some insurance companies do insure the people who shouldn't be on the road. The insurance companies who might be more discerning have to pay out when their clients get in an accident with the other insurers. But at the end of the day, who's on the road? Who sets the standards? Who allows them to be there? The state, right? It's my contention that it should be much more difficult to get a car license. There should be much more minimum training. There should be much harsher penalties for the people who are extremely dangerous and aggressive drivers. 3-4 speeding tickets. You never learned your lesson. Multiple drinking and driving, multiple vehicle out of service, multiple HOS, fines, not following your logbook, fudging your ELD. Like, there should be more like 2 strikes and you're out rules for this kind of thing. And those people should not be on the road. And then that way the insurance payouts will be less, and your $750,000 minimum is not the issue that it is.
Here,
am I wrong?
I don't disagree with you. I think here's how I'd approach it, because I understand the argument from OOIDA and from ATA. So just for the folks who are listening or watching this, like when ATA, the American Trucking Associations, and the Owner Operators Independent Driver Association, OOIDA, when they agree on something when it comes to our industry, that is what's going to happen. Like, you will not win in that fight. And there was an act in Congress a couple years ago called interesting name. I'll say interesting name. The Fair Compensation for Truck Crash Victims Act. That was the name of the bill. It did not pass. The reality in my mind is, one hand, I wish when they set the standard of the minimum insurance, they tied it to inflation. If they would have done that, now there is a real consequence, and I understand why OOIDA and I disagree. It removes capacity. If you can't afford $1 million policy or $2 million policy, you're out of the business. I'm sorry. And that means for American consumers, things will cost more. But I'm in a privileged position. I'm in a privileged position to say I am okay if things cost more because we remove bad capacity. I'm okay with that. Now, that's controversial. Now, the other piece I think is probably a better thing that you and I can both agree on, because I'm a very limited government guy. I like when government is very specific and very minor in their intervention. American shippers, the big people that the brokers want and the motor carriers want, are now requiring, in many cases, higher levels of insurance than the minimum. You might say, well, federal government said 750. I got 750. The shipper can say 2 million, or you go away. I'm not going to play with you. So there is a private solution too. As much as I'd like to see more rigorous standards on, passenger vehicle drivers, Gord, you and I know that boulder up that mountain, that's rolling down every single time. The First Amendment takes a back seat when you're talking about a driver's license.
Sure. And on that note about, shippers requiring a $2 million insurance policy, that's great. I just wish that the shippers had some other standards too, like don't send us 81 IQ idiots that were handed their license by a government program to try and make Biden look like he was doing something to help poor refugees, or, the state unemployment agencies forcing people to go to truck driving school to make it look like they're getting people off unemployment. Trucking is a lifestyle. Trucking is more than just a job. Trucking is a culture. Trucking is an identity. Trucking is a profession. Not everybody can be a truck driver. We have to get right. I understand one of your sponsors is DAT, and there's a gentleman that works there by the name of Ken Adamo.
Ken Adamo, yes, the freight nerd.
Yeah, I don't think Ken and I like each other very much, and that's fine. There's people, and I could be wrong. I just gather this from things Ken has said. There's just people in America and in the rest of the world who believe in something called blank slateism, where you can just take anybody and train them in anything, and they're just going to be fine. That's not true. There's certain things that are imperceptible to the spreadsheet. There are certain things which cannot be quantified, cannot be measured, and they just are. They just exist. Drive, class, certain type of skills that either you have to inherit or learn or develop over a lifetime, and you cannot take some guy that showed up here from Ethiopia yesterday, hand him a CDL, and tell me he's the same truck driver I am that's been doing it for 28 years in 4 different countries. Because the trucking industry and the government and the insurance people don't make any differentiation between who has that CDL. All they look at, oh, you've got a CDL. That doesn't mean anything. Having a CDL is meaningless. How much experience does this person have? What's their driving record? How many miles do they have? What do their customers say about them? We don't have anything in trucking which gives metrics to your performance, your attitude, and your skill, and your approach to the craft of driving. There's none of that. So that means everybody gets squashed flat. We're all the same, right? And while that exists, we are never going to fix anything.
I will say this. I think you'd actually like Ken Adamo. I'm going to set up a meeting and the three of us will have a conversation. He's an interesting character, but I'll say he's looking at, I think, macroeconomic trends. I think, to your point, it's super well taken in the sense of not everyone can do the job of driving a truck. And the other factor is that this industry is so much more than just over-the-road motor carriers. This is a $1 trillion domestic industry where you have forklift operators, shunt operators, billing clerks. Trucking is everything. So I would say this, and this might be controversial. I think anybody can find a great job in trucking. Now, maybe not every single job is great, but this industry is everything from roofing supply to retail to driving to Amazon and dropping off packages. There's a lot of things we have to fix with it. And I think that's the big challenge we have in the trucking industry is we are a very dangerous industry. We have regulators who are, in my opinion, asleep at the wheel. When you have totally 80 to 90% of all motor carriers have zero information available on inspections on the FMCSA's database. That's a massive problem. I mean, we have for us to kind of give a size of the scope of the scale of this. There's about $1 billion a year budgeted for the FMCSA, and that $1 billion goes to about 1,000 employees who are tasked with the 550,000 motor carriers, 25,000 brokers, 4,000 bus companies, and then all the drivers. And they can't regulate. They don't have the resources. And so if the regulators aren't able to help us, what do we do? How do you fix what is? Well,
you change some of the rules. I have some recommendations to help the FMCSA.
I want to hear them.
Shout out to Justin Super Trucker Martin.
I love
and
Justin.
and Dale Prax of Freight Validate, who've both put forward the same idea. If you want to be a broker in the American trucking market, you and all of your employees must produce a TWIC card, Transportation Worker Identity Credential, which shows that you live here. We cannot. You want to be able to afford the maintenance on the equipment to get your 20% OOS rate down. Your carrier needs more money in their pocket.
That's right. They
having a significant percentage of the value of those loads being skimmed off and sent to Serbia or Pakistan or Colombia or wherever the fuck, that has to stop. I'm sorry, guys. Your parasitization on the find me, Mr. Adamo. Find me a white guy born in the United States or Canada who's driving a truck in India, who's driving a truck in Serbia, who's driving a truck in Russia. Find me somebody from here who's brokering loads there and then skimming that value off the top and bringing them back here, specifically trucking. I know American companies go all over the place. We live in a globalized society. I get that. In transportation, this is a very specific thing. You need every single penny you can get because transportation is a very capital-intensive industry. Trucks, trailers, parts, mechanics, inspections, admin, compliance. It costs like a gazillions of dollars to be in compliance and to run a tight ship. We cannot have any part of our value going to some guy sitting in an office in fucking Serbia. Sorry.
I gotta jump in this because this is one of my things I get really excited about. I think you and I may agree on this next point that I'm going to make. My belief is the growth of the freight brokerage industry. So they were moving like 6% of freight, 20 years ago. Now it's like 25%. One of the things the brokerage industry did was they began offshoring a lot of the carrier track and trace and carrier onboarding. And so these companies sprang up all across the world where we would send the truck driver to speak to someone in this foreign nation or whatever. And these people in these foreign countries have then learned how our system works. Sure. And when those brokerages start scaling back or not working as well, or even the person just changed jobs, they now know how to defraud us. And
Dale Brax told me the same thing on my podcast.
Yeah, I think when you look at this and you see it from the scales, it's a $35 billion a year problem. I think it's because we've self-inflicted. Your point on operating ratio is so well taken. For those who are not in transportation, the way our industry measures its productivity or its value is this thing called an operating ratio. And the idea is, how much revenue do you take in? How much do you spend? And what do you got left? And this is a penny's business. If you have a 95% operating ratio, you took in $1, you spent 95 cents, you got 5 cents left. That is normal. That is normal. Now,
super low profit margins.
Absolutely. Unless you're Old Dominion, because to this day, they are a 75% OR. I mean, I love OD. I love OD. But the LTLs can find ways to make a lot more money than the truckload folks. So you're exactly right. Like, we have an incredibly unprofitable industry that is absolutely essential. And there's all these things grabbing. I'm curious on your thoughts of broker transparency. Have you been following that? Have you been thinking about that?
I've been following it. So full disclosure, one of my uncles established one of Canada's very first freight brokerages when that became possible, when deregulation came to Canada. He was very successful at it. But my uncle and his business partner both had backgrounds in trucking. My uncle was a trucker. My uncle didn't finish high school. He was in the Army, and then he went to go work with my grandpa, and then he worked his way through. He was an OTR driver. Then he moved into dispatch. Then he moved into dock management. Then he moved into general management. And then he got hired by one of the biggest companies in Canada, and he managed one of their largest accounts in the early 1980s.
That's the dream. That's incredible.
Right? And then they made a bunch of promises to him they didn't deliver on, and his customers were expressing frustration, so he started a brokerage. But he understood, my uncle understood, you have to pay the trucker. You cannot rip the truckers off. They are the guys that make this happen. I can be a broker, but I have to be very upfront about what my cut is, and I have to make sure these guys get paid. Otherwise, the whole thing doesn't work.
Yeah,
so later on, my uncle's company was sold twice after he retired by his business partner, but ultimately it became Uber Freight Canada. Uber Freight moved into Canada, and they built it on top. They built it on top of the office my uncle established. Okay, so he did it right. There is room for brokers.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the transparency thing goes, I'm sort of conflicted because I see the arguments from the tuna guys, right?
Absolutely.
The North American owner operators group guys who are saying, look, it's not just about price opacity, it's all the accessorials. We need to know if we've been double or triple brokered. We need to know how many steps between the actual customer and us, because if we don't know that, if something goes wrong, who do we go to? We're just going to get ripped off. I get their argument. I also understand the argument of guys like Kevin Rutherford who say, you bring in transparency and it's going to be a race to the bottom because everyone's going to try and undercut each other on price. That's also a valued argument. I'm not sure what to do about this, okay? I don't know what to do about the transparency thing because there's good arguments on both sides.
I would like to give you my
there should be less brokers. My position is there should be less brokers.
I think there should be less of both brokers and motor carriers, but that's a separate story. This is my initial take on broker transparency. So at a practical level, as of today, brokers force most motor carriers to waive the right to the document. So you sign a contract, you don't have the right to it. And that is being litigated right now. There's a case called Pink Cheetah versus TQL. We're watching that case unfold. There's nothing really to report there. My belief, and this goes back to my belief on safety and maintenance. The FMCSA's mandate is super clear. It is to look at safety, and it's looking at the drivers and the equipment condition. And if you tell them your new mandate is going to include going between motor carriers and brokers and looking at what they've produced record-wise, that is outside their mandate, in my opinion. I think it's
sure. Yeah. No. I don't think FMCSA are the people to do that. Like you say, that their mandate is limited and they don't have enough people and they ain't doing a good enough job on what they're supposed to be governing anyway. So putting something else on their plate's just not going to go anywhere.
And then what I love about your story with your uncle, the fact that he knew what it's like to drive a truck and the sacrifice of being away from your family, the dangers, the hassles, the traffic, the everything. And you pay your motor carrier as well. That means that they're going to want to work with you. And I think that's a business decision that should be
He didn't become a multimillionaire by ripping people off for 30 years.
Exactly. My father's business ran for
He
27
produced
years.
value. He produced value for everyone, his customers and the carriers he worked with. It's simple.
So this is why for me, I look at broker transparency and say it's not important enough for us to warrant new rulemaking from the FMCSA. To your point, if we really care about it, there should be a different agency, a different law. That organization's not equipped to do it. And the same token, it should be businesses make their decisions. If you can make the waiver, then this rulemaking doesn't even matter, because if you can waiver it, then it doesn't matter. So I look at it like, it's an interesting topic. It is so controversial, Gord. I have been eviscerated in many places that I go because I understand, like, motor carriers think that having access to those records means they'll get more money. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I think you get more money for motor carriers by increasing the barriers to enter. Get the insurance higher, the training more rigorous, the liability possibilities more stringent, and then maybe you have a better
supply. So this goes back to my a question I'm approaching in my book.
Yeah.
So a lot of people like to blame deregulation, okay? So Motor Carrier Act of 1980 comes along. It basically rips apart the old way of doing things where the government said, only so many carriers, we monitor your rates, getting an authority is impossible.
Absolutely.
It had to be reformed. I understand full well, I know guys who operated on both sides of it, and it made transportation really expensive. It made a lot of big carriers lazy. It was hard to get stuff moved, and it had to be reformed. What we're seeing now is that the pendulum has swung so far in the other direction that anybody with a pulse and $300 can get an MC number, that we are now dealing with the problems created by the pendulum being too far over here.
Absolutely. All the problems are the designs.
Is the answer to go back to the pre-1980 regulated paradigm? No. However, it's too easy to become a driver. It's too easy to get a motor carrier license. I come from a place of like free market. I'm originally a free market guy. I think, you know what, man, do what you want. I shouldn't stand in your way. However, the government owns the roads, right? We do not live in Libertopia where it's full on libertarian anarcho-capitalism.
Private highways everywhere.
Everyone's private contracting, perfect system. Don't live there. The government is involved, so therefore the government has a role to play. They own the roads. They govern the roads. They govern who gets on them. They don't govern business. Fine. Don't govern the business. Don't do anything about MC numbers. Don't do anything about the business side of it, but significantly increase who gets on that road, right? Yeah. They're just, the licensing requirements are too low, way too low. I've driven truck in Australia and New Zealand, okay? I spent a lot of time traveling when I was younger. Australia and New Zealand have graduated truck licensing systems. So in New Zealand and Australia, in order to get a CDL, they're their equivalent of truck, trailer, 80,000 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. In Australia, that's called an HC, a heavy combination. In New Zealand, that's called class 4. In order to get to that class, you have to go through another one first. And in Australia, that's called a rigid license, or what we call a straight truck, right? Like no trailer, just a box truck. You have to have a box truck license in Australia for 1 year before you can go get a trailer license, and same in New Zealand. And then if you want to like get up to the heavy stuff, like pulling B trains and road trains and all kinds of different combinations, you have to have the single trailer license for a year first, and then you move up to the next one, so that way it shows that you're getting some practice at the physical act of driving, some experience with like interacting with traffic, interacting with the industry and the customers you serve, the terrain, weather conditions, the whole gamut. Is like, the idea is 1 year time frame of training under each class of license before you can get the next one.
So in the United States, we have like each state administers their thing. So everyone kind of does their own thing. Do you think there would be a better use of saying the federal government should be like, this is the testing standard, we're going to administer it, these are the graduations? Is that how they do it?
Well, I mean, the CDL system is recognized, right? Like, you get a CDL in Rhode Island and they have to recognize it in California. And then there's an international one where like a Mexican license is now recognized in the United States and a Canadian license. So like
non-domiciled CDLs.
Well, that's another story. But like they are registered federally, right? Like everybody recognizes it under federal law. Like Missouri is not making rules saying, hey, you guys from Minnesota, you have to do this. There's a base minimum. If the feds can enforce that base minimum, they can increase the requirements a little bit. I'm not typically for the federal government doing everything, but if the roads are their domain, then I have to pay taxes to operate on them, and I have to share them with mewling fucking cabbages that have no idea what they're doing and put me and my family at risk. I want those standards increased.
Well, now I want to segue to like the name of your Substack, because now you've kind of got me thinking about, okay, the federal government, maintains these roads. The new thing we've talked about deregulation. Before that was containerization, but now we're approaching this age of automation, the driverless truck. Your Substack is the autonomous trucker. I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on the potential for true driverless trucks on America's highways?
I don't have too much. I don't have an opinion so much on the technology or the potential, because I think they're going to do it. I think it's
inevitable. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, they've got the technology. What they have not demonstrated yet is its complete safety. What they have not demonstrated is its utility in certain applications. And I think they're going to be a little bit, there's a lot of there's other stuff. It's not just whether or not their technology works. Will the public accept it? Will the government accept it? Will insurance companies accept it? So there's sort of social and community and governmental buy-in, right? That stuff is not established yet.
I had this fascinating conversation with a Class 8 OEM. I won't say which one. And they were working with one of the autonomous truck manufacturers. Again, I won't say which one. And the lawyers for the autonomous trucking company assured the Class 8 truck manufacturer that they can start doing interstate autonomous trucks moves without any additional federal regulation. Like they said, the FMCSA rules that are here right now, we don't need to modify them. We can start doing this tomorrow. And I talked with the truck manufacturer. I said, that's wrong. Like that's not good legal advice. I would get a different lawyer to review. It's like, well, they assured us. Like, I don't trust any of them. My feeling now is kind of we began this conversation with, which is at first with change, people say that will never happen. Then there's a moment that happens and everything changes. And then you look back and go, it's always been this way. So we are in this moment in time, maybe 5 years, maybe 10-year window, where every single thing about the trucking industry will change. Now, it's not going to be 20% of all stuff moved by a robot. Maybe it's 15 or 10, whatever that number is. Once it happens, you can't go back. Like to your point of deregulation, you will never go back to the time when you say, I want to have every single person be a W-2 employee and also be a Teamster. That'll never happen in our industry. So you can look back and say, that would be nice. No, it will never go back. And so my hope is, and I think why I love what you do, is you watch what's happening and you comment about it in real time. And you say, this is what I think about it. And my hope is for people who listen to this or watch this or read your Substack is when the time comes and the FMCSA proposes rules on autonomous trucks, everybody says something. Even if they want them, I don't care. I just want them to participate because
I want them to do that. And okay, so in order to say something and in order to have an opinion about this issue, you need to know about the issue. You need to know about the trucks. You need to know about the technology, and you need to know a little bit about the intent of the people building it. So the one thing that I've focused on with my watching the implementation of this technology is, what are the autonomous truck people saying? What's their marketing? Yeah. And that, I think, is the thing that annoys me the most, is they have a different message depending on their audience, and they're being misleading about this stuff, right? I'm going to pick on Aurora here because I've read their investor reports and I've watched how they do things, and I've invited them on my show, and they've turned down my invitation, so they don't answer me. They don't want to talk to me. Okay, fine. Aurora investor reports are public information. You cannot be sued, Matthew, by me talking about this on your show. Aurora's hey, listen, Absolutely. Securities and Exchange Commission, right? Anything that anything that a company tells its investors is public information, and it has to be the truth. They can lie to us. They can lie to the government. They cannot lie to their investors, okay? In Aurora's investment prospectuses, they are very, very direct about a couple of things, okay? One is a lie, which I think they should be investigated for, and Aurora doesn't do this. All of them do it. They all cite the driver shortage. Every single one of the autonomous truck system manufacturers quotes the American Trucking Association, who say there's a shortage of drivers. We all know that's false. We all know that it's false.
Let me give a quick caveat. And I will say that I believe I'm wrong. And I say this, but I believe this is a true way to frame it. We have a shortage of drivers that are willing to work for the current compensation and conditions available. Like
yes.
OD does not have a shortage of drivers. Like they are fine. They're fine. So that is the caveat I would say.
Yeah, no, great caveat on that note. Sean O'Brien, leader of the Teamsters, was talking about the driver shortage thing because Chris Spear, lying sack of shit, brought it up in this testimony a couple days ago at the Senate. Spear said, we have all these people, we have to get past these lies about the driver shortage. There actually is a driver shortage and it's not useful. And there's certain people say, no, mother trucker, there's no shortage. O'Brien gets up there and says, hey, companies that my union represents, 10 to 15% turnover per annum. The companies that guy, Chris Spear, represents, 90% plus, 100% plus turnover problem. What does that tell you about this shortage? Good for Sean O'Brien. I'm not a Teamster. I'm not big on unions, but at least he told the truth. Another thing that the investment prospectuses of people like Aurora say is that they are going to get rid of the human driver. They tell truck drivers, we're going to make your jobs better. We're not here to replace you. Go to the investment prospectus. It says right there, they're going to replace us. They don't say it directly. They're like, okay, so what we're going to do is, as part of our safety package, is we're going to have a remote drone safety operator who's monitoring X number of trucks. And our plan as we implement this technology is to increase the number of trucks being monitored by every remote safety operator. And they have a little graph showing this. So they're basically saying in one of their graphs, I have the files, that they're going to have one backup safety operator per 100 of their trucks.
Golly.
Do you think Matthew Leffler or anybody listening to this, that one guy sitting in front of a laptop like we are right now, can possibly monitor 100 tractor trailers at the same time and keep them all safe?
See, this is, I love that question.
It's in their prospectus. Go read it.
When the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance and the FMCSA were talking about driverless trucks, this is what they called level 4 automation, the remote operator. They put out a thing called, this is technical nonsense, it's called a SANPRIM, a Supplemental Advanced Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. One of the questions that FMCSA is asking is, and no proposed rules yet, just more like looking for feedback, is what training should a remote operator have? Should they have hours of service? Should they have part of the substance abuse stuff? Should they have random drug testing? What stuff should we have? Because there are no rules. And this is why I think it is so important for Americans to understand, look, this is inevitable. I'm sorry. If you think that the driverless trucks are not going to happen, they are going to happen.
They're going to happen. The question is about when and what does that implementation look like? Those are your
100%.
questions.
And we are in the mode of the actual framing of the regulatory landscape. And humans like us have never had more power to influence these things. So when you have the folks representing the business or the industry or whatever, we have just as strong of a voice as they do. Social media is an amazing, amazing tool. And I think your point is very well taken. This is not designed to make more drivers more efficient. It is to make less drivers all in and more equipment more efficient. I will also say that the autonomous trucks cannot have the vehicle maintenance standard of our vehicles today. You cannot have an autonomous vehicle at 20% failure rate. It's impossible. So they will have to be at a level of sophistication and maintenance and repair that's at 99% all the time. You could never do that thing the way that we do it currently. So if our system becomes safer and things become cheaper, I'm fine with that. Just let me be part of the rulemaking process. But, oh man,
Okay, like, so to your original question before, like, it's not a matter of whether we are okay with everything, right? If this stuff is inevitable, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All we can have is like an opinion or express our concerns, and then maybe somebody listens. If anybody here is listening to this from the autonomous systems manufacturer, I'm not going to stop what you guys are doing. None of my fellow truck drivers are going to stop what you're doing. Nothing we do about it. Technological advancing, the Luddites, they smashed all the looms and they got replaced anyways. It's going to happen. What I do not want, though, please stop lying to me about this. You're not making my job better. Aurora is basically saying that, oh, no, truck drivers, we're not going to take your jobs away. We're going to make them better. What you're going to do is you're going to reduce the number of available jobs because you clearly have stated in your prospectus that you only want one safety remote operator for every 100 trucks, okay? And then the jobs you do have available for drivers that you have advertised, doing pre-trips and hooking trailers up. I was doing that when I was like 15, 16 years old. That's a kid's job. Do you think most guys who run OTR, who love the road and love the culture of driving and love the salary of that, are going to work minimum wage, banging your robots onto a trailer and hooking up airlines and doing pre-trip inspections and nothing else? Please stop lying. Just stop lying.
I will say on the point of like the pre and post trip inspections, for every autonomous company I've encountered, they are having qualified heavy duty diesel technicians do this. So there is, and a lot of companies have made investments. Like you look at people like a Merit or Cox Automotive or Epica, these companies are being purchased. Do
you think a mechanic, do you think a Red Seal mechanic who did a 4-year apprenticeship, who's used to rebuilding engines, who's used to making things go, is going to stand around out in the yard and kick tires and hook up airlines and be happy to do that? Again, like think about what the actual job is, who usually does it, what level of experience you need, what level of salary you expect for this, and like how much people will tolerate that as a full-time position. Like these people they're nerds. They don't get it.
Oh, Gord. I love this. So my career before kind of becoming the armchair attorney and all that stuff was I worked with my father's maintenance company, and our entire business, the big part of our business was mobile service trucks on customer yards doing pre and post trip inspections and repairs on trucks and trailers, on-site services. So I see in my own mind, if ultimately FMCSA allows these things and they require, God willing, they require a certified mechanic to inspect this technology before it goes into operation, you will absolutely find a mechanic who's making $30-40 an hour in a service truck, looking at the sensors, looking for wear and tear, and then reporting that back. Maybe as time goes on, it's going to be different sensors that scan the truck, but that's also part of why this comment period, whenever they do this thing, will be so important, because I think there are mechanics, I know there are, who would love not to do clutch adjustments and brake jobs, but would like to do, that mud flap looks good, check, and we'll see what happens. But it
depends on what they're getting paid. Of course, there's people who are going to look for the easy way out, but like another thing about the autonomous stuff is like they want to keep a safety driver in. But like if their technology is as good as they say it is, what's the safety driver for? So I think it's to take the blame when something goes wrong.
This is another really interesting thing I want to kind of dive into. So that autonomous trucking company and that Class 8 manufacturer that I talked about earlier, after I had finished speaking with them and assured them that they were getting bad legal advice from the counsel of the autonomous trucking company, they had initially announced no driver in the vehicle. A day or two after I talked with the manufacturer, it was announced there was a safety driver in the driver's seat. Now, I do not think I have that kind of power. I am known by tens of people, but I will say the safety driver is a way for them to circumvent the fact that the rules are not allowing them to do what they want to do. So that driver is going to be probably on duty.
He's a placeholder. He's a placeholder.
On duty, not driving, and maybe he has to come in and take control, but that is the fig leaf they're going to offer us until the feds come up with some sort of a regulatory framework, and we'll hopefully get a chance to see that. Now, your book. We talked about this before we came on the program. We talked about it again at the very beginning. When does this thing become available? When can people pre-order it? Where can they go? Because you have such a robust knowledge of this business. I want to make sure people know how to find it.
Right. So I'm working on a book right now. It's called End of the Road: Inside the War on Truckers. It will be available for pre-order sometime in November. I'm not sure when. I just actually had a meeting with my publisher the other day about this. They're still, depends on when we get the manuscript in and when they talk to the printers and, there's the whole thing. There'll be an audiobook version. There'll be a Kindle version. You'll have the whole, whatever way you want to consume it, read it, listen to it. I may, in fact, be voicing it, although I think that's a bit of a risky proposition. Like, listen to this. Could you listen to this for 8 hours a day? I couldn't.
I'd be happy to read it if that would be useful to you. I won't take a single penny.
Yeah, but the book is a broad overview of the truck. It's not about the industry per se. It's about the job. It's about being a trucker. It's about the archetype. It's about our idea, what the job means, and it's sort of answering a question in the form of like a thesis, right? Like, since I started writing about this, I've done a bit of work and a number of articles for this think tank in DC called American Compass. I'm kind of their in-house trucking guy. Their leader and then a number of other people have also asked me about the Freedom Convoy in Canada and saying, why truckers? Why this one group of workers who rose up and said enough's enough with the mandates, went to Ottawa and did the thing? Why not welders? Why not, sales reps at stores? Why not coffee baristas? Why not any other number of jobs? Why was it truckers? And, a lot of people say, well, it was because of the cross-border mandates. But I'm saying, I've been thinking in my head for a long time now that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. There's been a number of impositions on truckers over the last number of decades that made the job worse, that made it so that like our salaries are frozen in time to 1980 and haven't kept up with inflation.
That's right.
We are being forced to compete with in-source labor. We are being forced to be surveilled by technology imposed on us by the state, ELDs, driver-facing cameras. They want to insult our intelligence by putting in automatic transmissions and front braking systems, and they say all this stuff is necessary. But as we discussed earlier, nothing has improved with the imposition of any of it because they keep doing the race to the bottom.
Down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keep the cost down.
Right. So my book is basically a survey of all of this stuff and how it's cracked out between 1980 and today. And then the last chapter will be about, what's the fate of the trucker now that autonomous trucks are coming. I want it to be like a howl from the driver's seat of the people saying, everything you've done to us is bullshit, and a lot of this was unnecessary, and like these are political and economic decisions that were outside of our power as workers, right? And like somebody has to respond to this, and that's the book is an answer to a question and a response to all of these impositions.
What I love about that story and thinking about the Freedom Convoy specifically, what makes truckers different? What makes truckers different? And one of the things I found to be the case is people get into this business because they love the freedom, because they don't have a boss sitting behind them, watching their emails or watching their screens.
You used to not have a boss sitting there watching us, but now we all do.
So that's the thing. It's like this profession, one of the oldest professions in history, moving things, the essential work that you cannot stop. We have eroded their earning capacity. We've eroded all of the different choices they can make with speed and with technology, cameras, monitoring. And the job isn't what it used to be. And now it's come to a place where the frog is in the pot. The water's boiling. It's over. It is gone. Like that life is gone for most people. The only ones that still have that little bit of like real freedom are the owner operators who choose not to have the driver facing camera. They might have the outward facing camera. They're not reporting back to anybody. They get to do their thing. And it's just fascinating because I think one of the things I believe deregulation was designed to do, and it wasn't intentional. I think it was always to reduce cost, but it was to stop the strength of the unions. And I use the analogy of the longshoremen. When we had the last strike on the East Coast, it was only 3 days long, but the fight for the longshoremen then was the same fight they had for decades: wages and automation. They solved wages in 3 days. Took them 6 months to figure out automation. And I taught this to my class about the West Coast strike in the 70s when the longshoremen went on strike for 3 months. and they stopped everything coming into the country. There was a time when the Teamsters could say, okay, everything stops, and everything stopped. And our government,
that's gone.
Yeah, those are gone days. So with automation fighting at the ports, you still have a very powerful union. They're not going to win that fight at the end of the day. They'll fight it, but they're not going to likely win it. But the trucker doesn't have that group to protect them anymore. It is just a bunch of voices in the void who are screaming to help the truckers solve these issues. And that Gordian knot that we keep thinking about, I'm looking forward to maybe your book will be part of the solution to that.
Well, I hope it's sharp enough.
Well, Gord, I cannot thank you enough. This has been going, it's about 30 minutes longer than we typically do. So I am really grateful and blessed you had a chance to come and talk with us today on our little podcast. Stick around. I got to do a quick little outro for the folks that are kind of sticking around. Oh my goodness. We had Gord Magill, the autonomous trucker substack. You'll see that in the notes. Book is coming out. Follow him on X or Twitter, whatever we want to call it. I'm not going to police you there. As always, I thank you to my sponsors that make all of this possible. DAT, Dial a Truck. It's that way. It's not that way. It's this one. And my friends at Genlaw. Check out what they have in the show notes. There's offers to save some money, get some demos, learn about the latest technology shaping the supply chain, and hopefully we'll get Gord and Ken Adamo together and have an interesting conversation. I'm going to work on that. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. And then I hit the end.